Hello there, outliers. Niiamah Ashong here, and thank you so much for letting us be a part of your journey here today. We're here on a roundtable discussion where we're bringing in three incredible outliers to share more about how they navigate their world, how they uplevel it, and how they do it in a way that stays like in integrity with who they are. And so I would love to have you get to meet our esteemed outliers here today as quickly as possible. Why don't we start off with you, Butch? Would you mind letting us know more about you and the game you're currently playing?
Niiamah, thank you so much for having me, man. My name is Ulysses Grant Slaughter Jr. That is my full name. I go by Butch. I am a United States Navy veteran. I'm a journalist by trade. I'm a producer. I produce all kinds of things, films, forums, campaigns, and my work is really all about redemption. When I look at the different stories that I focused on in my life and the stories that have come to me, it's always about redemption. It's about coming back from a difficult situation, and it's also about renewal and rebirth, and the second chance, overcoming. And so I take a lot of pride in my work and the things that come to me that are tough stories. I tell a lot of tough stories, but in telling those tough stories, gives me strength, and I think it helps me to serve my customers and my audience with a lot of power.
Oh, but I'm really excited to play with this year. You just brought in like with a lot of power, and I've been looking myself and thinking, what does it look like to bring power back into the things that get done here? So thanks for bringing that in. Butch, so we have a good time today. Fabio, want to let's get to know you. Would you mind sharing a bit about you and the game you're currently playing?
Sure. My name is Fabio da Silva Fernandes. I am a mindfulness consultant, a Reiki trainer, and a guest speaker on the topic of resilience cultivation. And that's the theme of my podcast called The Stumbling Spirit, which is also the name of my practice. So I really resonate with what Butch just said.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have some fun with this in just a bit here. We got all the R's go. We got renewal, rebirth, like we got resilience. We have some things we can play with here. So Eb, like let us get to know you. Tell us more about you and the game you're playing.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. I'm really pumped about this podcast already because we have amazing people and I believe we're going to have fun on this hangout. So my name is Soibibo Mac-Roberts, but I like to go by the name Soibi because it's very easy to be pronounced by every other person. I'm from River State, Nigeria. Okay, first of all, I like to say I'm a husband because that is one of the most important things. So I'm married to my wife, Marituka Mac-Roberts. And so for me, with the game I play is really about discovery and clarity. So I host a podcast called On Net End, and our goal is to bring clarity to young people. So I happen to stand in spaces where I function as a youth development advocate. I'm a youth pastor, pastor young a group of young people, and I also consult for businesses in line with brand consultations and all that. So that's what I get to do in my line of work.
Well, like I'm excited to play with each of you here. Thank you for doing the work that you do out in the world. We have Butch, like you captured me when you were talking about the things that like that really the through line through the work that you do, and the projects that come your way. And so you were talking about redemption, renewal, rebirth. Fabio, you talk about resilience, right? I want to let's start off our conversation in that space here. And what you'll find is that in some places we'll talk about the idea of it, right? But what I really care about is like your own experience of it, right? And so let's start off with you, Butch, because I think this might be in your world. I guess the question that comes here is like, how has like any of these words, so like redemption, renewal, resilience, how has that played like a direct like influence on like the level of the game that you play right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to jump right into it now. But when I was 12 years old, my father shot and killed my mother, and I was a witness to that. And Sobi used the term clarity, and my mother's name is Clarice, which means clarity. And as a young man, I think I was thrown into this world. This is not something that I had in mind when I was 12 years old growing up in Chicago. So I was kind of thrown into it. My experience was kind of thrown on me. And a lot of my experience and my contributions are a thread from the day my mother died up until, very recent in my life where difficult circumstances are presented to me and people have trusted in me to help them resolve difficult situations. And so I've become very committed to these difficult situations because one thing's for sure in life, you're going to have some difficult times. You are going to have some difficult times. And some of them you just can't stop them. And so what I like about Fabio talking about resilience, I think resilience is extremely important. Um, but I think it's also important to establish purpose so that you're not acting as if something happened to you, but something happened for you, and it's an opportunity for you to rebuild yourself, for you to be redeemed. So um, I'm honored to face these challenges, and I'm honored to help people face these challenges.
Yeah, like I appreciate you bringing us in here, Butch, right off the bat. Like you're giving us a strong foundation to have the rest of the conversation. Fabio, so I'll be curious what your thoughts are just to continue to evolve from here. So, um, yeah, bring it in. What's evolving for you?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank Butch for being so open and vulnerable about his experience. And I think that's what makes it so real. I think that there are moments in our lives, certainly in mine, where, I've been presented with a challenge or challenges. And there are many different ways that we can approach those challenges. You know, in my practice in doing mindfulness and Reiki, those are modalities that help with dealing with difficult situations, to build up that resilience, to connect within the body, to connect with difficult emotions, to really notice what's arising within the body. And so I know that these are practices that have helped me personally, but there are many different ways that, we can move through life and access um, wisdom that might help us move through challenging, traumatic situations.
Yeah, that's really true. And Mr. Butch says something that really resonates with what I believe. He said we need to see things not happening to us, but happening for us. And that is where the purpose question come in. When we realize that we are on earth for an assignment and everything works together for our good, it gives us a good perspective to deal with things that come our way. So when you go through, like Mr. Bush shared about the trauma you experienced as a child, you then realize that, okay, if this happened, that means it's happening for me. What is then in it for me? So it helps you to process situations with the perspective of getting a message from them. And that message fortifies you to get better and stronger. And it also gives you a certain level of empathy with which you can deal with others. I believe there are certain experiences that gives you the speaking right to speak with people. Someone recently said something that I find so intriguing. It said, "Oh, people are experts when they're advising people going through issues when they're not the ones going through them." So you become an
Mhm.
expert to advise because you've not gone through it. But if you've gone through it, it's not just about advice. You will walk through the process of counseling, walk through the process of processing with the person because you can relate with the person's story. I believe all things that happen, like that seems like it happening to us, is happening for us. I think that's the perspective we should build on.
Mhm.
I really resonate with what you said, Soibi, because there's an element of compassion here, right? It's interesting in terms of what you said, in terms of, the kinds of counseling that we might get from, people about our specific situation that may not have gone through what we've been through. And sometimes there's judgment in that. And so I think that, compassion is a really important piece, the self-compassion, but also compassion towards one another to be able to um, overcome or develop that muscle, that resilience muscle within us.
And I think to your point, Fabio, there's been a way that people have trapped certain energies in their experiences. They've trapped energies in their bodies. A lot of the times we do a lot of thinking. We put a lot of weight in our brain, but we don't understand the impact that it has had on our bodies. And I am not and never have been a big fan of the term trauma. While I do get it, I do get what it means to be destabilized in such a way, shocked in such a way, something that happens to us out of the so-called normal. But I think that the human being is very well equipped, beyond well equipped to respond. And this is where, um, in my experience, it's through my own shocking, these things where I've been shocked where I've understood that, hey, I can take that voltage. I don't want to, I'd prefer not to take the voltage. But if I have to take the voltage, I got to figure out, as you seem to be saying, I got to figure out how to work that through my body. I got to figure out how to use that to my advantage and how to um, pour it back out in a way that it serves a lot of people. And um, the shock, the trauma can be a gift in many ways. And that's what I try to help people do to convert that stuff into power. And that power, as you said, so it be being empathetic as possible.
I've been thinking a lot about the relationship between resilience and survival. And when you were speaking, Butch, about having that self awareness to understand what it is that you need or to notice what's arising within you, you're that I noticed that that is a very resilient way of moving through the world. And so, um, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is that, sometimes when people act from sort of a survival place, it it could be from a place of desperation. It could be from a place of being self-protective.
Mm-hmm.
And there could be a lot of masking that takes place
Mm-hmm.
or numbing that takes place in terms of, what are the things around me externally that I can use to distract myself from dealing with whatever I'm dealing with.
Right.
And so I've been thinking about this relationship between resilience and survival and how, not to say that one is better than the other. I think that they both need each other, but just to say that in moving through life and moving through the world, when we're more in a resilience way of being, in that state of being, we're able to navigate life with less, I guess, bumps along the way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so true. I want to see survival as a trauma not well processed. Mr. Butch said something like when trauma comes, it's like electricity coming from the high tension like we have here in Nigeria. But then you need a transformer that converts it to what you can use to power the gadget you have at home. That's high tension, the high capacity electricity current. If it goes directly to your home appliances, it will blow them up. So I think trauma is like someone who's trying to not convert as that high electricity flowing through the high tension, who just tries to puts it directly to an appliance. So
Mm,
the person then tries to store it, and that's where the person goes into that state of trying to be all protective because the person has didn't process that trauma that came in. So the person is now burnt out with that energy.
hmm.
So so instead of going to that mode, that survival mode, I think we should rather choose the approach of processing, like what Mr. Butch does, just to redeem that moment, redeem that
Hmm.
experience,
Hmm.
and convert it to an
Hmm.
energy that can power your gadget, power your smart TV, and also you can use to power your mobile phones to grow or and also communicate to the world. I believe there is a reason why every experience we go through happen. And it is not to our detriment. It is
Right.
actually for our growth. It's
Hmm.
actually for the improvement of the human interaction. So the
Hmm.
reason why we are still backward in as humans is because most of the experiences those who had gone ahead of us had, they did not process it rightly.
Yeah, so do you
Hmm.
mind if I pause real quick because like you've actually said a couple different things that I think has had like some resonance in this
Hmm.
space. I want to
Right.
give people a chance to actually get a chance to process that real
Hmm.
quick
Hmm.
before we start up a new thing here. So
Hmm.
Okay.
let's get like one or two more comments here, and then I'll bring in something else. But go for that. Go for it. It seems like you're ready.
Well, if I was following the thread of where Sobi was going, and pardon me if I'm not quite where you were going, Sobi, but I think that is so important. I'm a writer, I'm a filmmaker, and I often use creative license. I interpret things in such a way that I want the victory. You know, when I convert, I'm looking for some form of amplification, some form of victory. And so when we talk about that trauma again, that thing that gets trapped in us and it's not being converted, we get to shaking and shivering, and it becomes very destabilizing as opposed to converting it in such a way that we can breathe fire out into the world. And I think that
Mm,
that's what we're aiming for is we want to be able to take it in and then breathe fire out into the world, fire of understanding. But that's, I'm thinking of the Phoenix now too, which is a great form of redemption. We want to be able to come back from that shake and that shiver so that we can give something to the world. I think the world deserves the fire of the Phoenix.
So like
mm,
there's something that's working through me as y'all are talking. This is it's really interesting to me. And so now we've been talking about like redemption and
Hmm.
and the shock. Like we've been talking about resilience from the level of the theme or like the
Hmm.
idea of it. And I love to bring it now into like, all right, for any outliers that's listening, they're like, this all sounds good. But like you don't know what I have like you don't know what I got burned down through this thing. Like you
Yeah,
don't know about this here.
yeah.
So can y'all make this real for us here? Like share a bit about um a project that you took on right now, and if it could be a project because like there's elements about that, but there's also if there's also like a real part in your life where you felt like, hey, wait, like I needed to. It called the most resilience out of me. It's not just like
Mm,
resilience 101,
mm,
but it's like resilience 5.0. Like I needed to
mm,
bring everything I had to the
mm-hmm.
table here, or like something crashed around you and you had to go through that redemption process. Can we make this real here for any outlier that's thinking and saying, oh, it's good for y'all, but like you don't know what I did, you don't know
Yeah,
how badly this went. You mind
yeah,
bringing some of that in?
yeah.
And
I'm, I'm,
I'm
I'm,
open to anyone jumping in on this
you
one.
know,
What you
I'm
got?
going to try to make this as quick as possible. I think your point, Niiamah, is so crucial that there are people who have these experiences, and we all have different experiences, and we will say things like, "You don't know what I've been through. You have no idea what happened." And it's true. Each one of us has a different kind of experience, and that's life. I'm gonna give you another one. I was victim of a false allegation of abuse about 3 years ago, and as it turns out, it was with my ex-wife. And it was such a destabilizing situation. And I've met so many other men and women who have fell victim to this. And what it did was it destabilized me, but it also challenged my ability to maintain my business. It challenged my ability to keep moving my business forward because when you attack the individual, you're actually also attacking their assets. And my assets were being threatened. And so that was one of those situations where I was emotionally, financially, spiritually, even physically destabilized, where I had to figure out how to regain myself. And anybody who's ever been through a situation where somebody said that you did something to them that you didn't do to them, it can be extremely disorienting. But I had to figure out how to gather myself. I had to remember what was important in spite of what happened and start to call on my resources and my network and help me to rebuild myself to the point where when I was done, man, I am so much stronger. Going through that process made me so much stronger, but I didn't see that when it was going on. And I tell people I would rather that that did not happen. But since it did happen, I'm glad I've been able to rebuild myself in this way. And people have to believe that they can rebuild themselves after some of the worst things in the world happened to
Thank you for sharing that, Butch. That that sounds like a really um, challenging experience that you went through. You know, in reflecting on my life, and certainly just from a business perspective, I've had to make some recent changes just from just to ensure that my business continues. And and that means that right now I'm 100% mobile, so my overhead costs are like really minimal.
me.
And it was a very difficult choice for me to make because I operated my business out of my home, and that was my home for 18 years. And so I effectively had to make a decision about, okay, well, look, if this practice, if this passion of mine, if this calling of mine is that important, then what am I going to do to make it work? And so I essentially made the decision. I'm like, I really believe in this. I really believe in this practice. And I left my apartment in downtown Toronto, and I decided to live what they call the digital nomad lifestyle. It's not as exotic as maybe some people. I'm still within Canada, but I have to tell you, I've experienced almost an immediate shift in my energy. I feel more revitalized. I feel like I have more attention, focus, clear-mindedness in terms of being able to approach my business from a different lens. So I think when I reflect on resilience in recent times as it relates to my business, that's what I think about. And also, what it really highlighted for me is how I show up for myself, but
Hmm.
also how others show up for me or don't show up. And so I've been really reflecting a lot about that. I've been reflecting about, you know, because I think that's important. I think that's important to know
I agree.
who stands by your side,
Yeah.
in difficult circumstances. And also at the same time having grace because everyone is going through something whether we realize it or not, and just to have grace about that as well too.
Hmm. Hmm.
I want to share from the standpoint that it's okay for you to take time in processing your trauma. It's very much okay for you to take time in processing your trauma because when Niiamah asked the question, I was just thinking through, and I realized that okay, something really happened to me 4 years ago that's really affected my business. So, I'm like in the communication space, my podcast. Okay, I had this major opportunity that I had to engage the federal government on a particular policy on account of my podcast being out there. So I put it out like, okay, yeah, this is an opportunity I'm having, and someone calls me and says, you're always putting yourself out there. And the person has such a strong influence in my life that I felt so bad. And the person did not know. That was the reason I had to pause podcasting for a long while
Wow.
because the person spoke about my podcast, spoke about quite a number of things that day, and it was almost like you're being too loud.
Mm,
So that's the
mm,
hiatus I took away from the public space made me realize that it wasn't really about me, but it was about leading a generation of people towards clarity. It took me a long time to get over myself, but then I'm back. I'm stronger. So it took me 4 years. Okay,
mm,
yeah, I could advise
mm,
that if you can process better, because if I'm looking back now, you think, okay, what would I have done better? If I'd uh, engaged a shrink or a counselor to help me walk through my trauma, okay, if I knew Mr. Butch then, I would have said, okay, please, I really need help on this. But it took me time to work it myself and just a few counsel from friends. So,
mhm,
so I would say, okay, make sure you don't run away. You don't go into self-preservation
mhm,
because of a trauma you received.
mm,
But let it be something you put out there and say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. Can you
mhm,
help me seek help in processing that which you're dealing with?
mhm, mhm,
Yeah,
mhm. Sobe, I love that, man, because I see people self-isolate a lot of the times when something
I'm guilty of
happens.
that. I'm
Yeah, me
guilty of
too,
that.
man. Me too. We all are. We're guilty of something happens and we retreat, sometimes out of fear, out of pain, out of embarrassment. We retreat. And I once heard it said, and I think it's true, that we both are harmed and healed in community. And so
Oh my God.
I love that line. We're both
Wow.
harmed and healed in community. And
Oh,
so
wow.
when I think of even this opportunity to be with you all right now, I don't feel like I'm on a podcast. I'm talking with some men who know something about my life, even though they don't know me personally. There's nothing so unique about me that you can't understand where I'm coming from, because I can understand where you're coming from. And yeah, I mean, like if I had known you 3 years ago when certain things were going on, I'd call you and say, hey, man, I need somebody to talk to. And I think outliers, as you have it, uh, Niiamah, excuse me, as you have it, I think outliers need to understand that we are sometimes on the periphery, but when we're on the periphery, we're out there handling business. And we handling business like in a different kind of way. We are in the wilderness. We are, sometimes retreating, but we're not running away. Retreating is not running away. Retreating is just backing up to figure out how to come forward again. That's what it is. And that's what this feels like to me. And I really appreciate being here with all of you.
I appreciate it as well. And I just want to go back to a point, and it relates to this idea of retreating. It also relates to, I believe the word that you used, Butch, earlier was converting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Conversion
Mm-hmm.
of that energy. And I just wanted to highlight that it's not an easy process, right? And it's not a process that happens overnight. It's a process that can take time
Mm-hmm.
and can bring up a roller coaster of difficult emotions
Right.
and also different challenging states of being. Um, and even just from an energetic level, it could be all over the map as well. And so, some people refer to it as the dark night of the soul, and sometimes
Yep.
that dark night is, a dark
Yep.
year or dark, years,
Yeah.
you know. So I just wanted to highlight that because, as we're talking about resilience and, and all of that, all of the stuff that comes with it, I think it's important to say that, it's not an easy process,
Mm-hmm.
but it's, I really do believe that, resilience is one of those things that is accessible to everyone. And, it is our birthright. It's our
Yeah,
birthright.
yeah. I've heard it said that first of all, there's no one size fits all kind of approach, which is what is beautiful because we're all individuals. So there's no one size fits all approach to anything we're talking about. But I think comparison, I've heard another line, Sobi, you might like this one too if you haven't heard it, but comparison is the thief of joy. So
Yeah.
so when we find ourselves looking at how somebody else is doing something or where we think they are, and we're assuming that we understand who they are, what they've gone through, all of that, we spend more time looking at them than we do concentrating on our own self-development. And I think it's important to have people that you can measure yourself by. There's nothing wrong with that, but we got to be real careful when it comes to putting ourselves down and assuming that our lives are supposed to be like somebody else's.
Y'all. I'm like having a lot of fun with y'all. By the way, I'll share this. I haven't said too much in this conversation, but I'm very grateful, and like I'm taking notes and everything as we go on. And I realized that I was like happy as we were talking, and it made me. The reason I was happy is I was like, oh yeah, this is what I love to do. Like I love to
Yeah,
go to parties where people just don't know each other. I happen to know them, and I bring them together. I'm like, here, y'all should talk, and then I
right.
like to walk away and then let them actually talk because it's there's the beginning of things that can continue to germinate. There's the beginning of different connections that like may not have come to life together that are now being formed. So but so you'd be like Fabio, like thank you for playing, thank you for like driving the conversation that you're looking to have. And for us here as outliers, getting a chance to see like how are y'all navigating this? How do y'all thinking about this? And just to have conversations like this, to be able to listen in and be like, this is a lot of us. You talk about self-isolation. My number one fear is being alone. That's part of the other reason
Mm,
why I keep bringing people together. I think,
mm, mm.
and there's something in there around the richness of conversation in this way, the richness of people like y'all just met, like if I'm not mistaken, like none of you knew each other beforehand, right?
Right.
Right. And so we can
Yeah.
still just be in space and to have that. And I just think like sometimes there's something about that was missing from my world. So just know that like in real time, I'm deeply grateful for you. Fabio, I just saw you unmuted. Is there anything you want to bring in?
No,
Okay,
I
cool.
just unmuted because I realized that in case I needed to say something, you would
You're
not be
on.
able to hear
You're
me.
good. So there's a couple different ways I'm loving this conversation. There's a couple different things that are coming to me. We'll probably only have time to go down through one of them, but let me the two places that are on my mind right now. Maybe we can see which ones are more alive within the three of you. Are staying on this theme of redemption, resilience, revitalization, like all the re's right that are coming through. Um, what is a project that you're taking on right now that like and where is the part that challenges you so much that you feel like you might be up against that? Like that's one way that I'm thinking about this right now. The other part of me
Mm,
that's actually interested is like um I think y'all have done a good job bringing in yourselves. So I'm very
mhm,
interested now in being like I'm open, like okay, outside of you, how does this work? So
mhm.
but you're producing things. Fabio, I know you work with different organizations. So maybe you're all about leadership and youth development. Like so, I'm curious about how like the topics that we've been bringing in continue to play for the people that you lead or for the problems that the people you lead may have. So I'll leave it up to you to take it if you want to take it in either direction. One of them being like a project that you're taking on and how you're looking at it, or looking at it and saying, okay, for the people I leave, the clients that I have, like this is how this shows up for them. I would love to. I find myself really curious, and I can go there with y'all. Just so you know, I'm going there with y'all because you have allowed yourself to actually be real
Yeah,
about yourselves. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
we get
yeah.
that. Let's keep building.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
let me jump in. Okay. All right. So for me, 2 years ago, I started a new part. So over the years, I've been interested in the public space and policy and advocacy, and it's something that has been a key interest in me. But I've never seen myself doing that because I always tell myself, "Oh, I'm busy. What I'm doing, just youth development, advocacy, pastoring, counseling, and all that." So 2 years ago, I took the bet on myself, went on to go, decided to go back to college to study public policy and administration.
Hmm.
And when I look back, I think in the past decade, okay, that is one of the best decisions I've taken because it has opened me up to a whole new world of possibilities. And yes, and I've been able to channel this passion I have to see leadership done properly. I've been able to channel it to training myself there, and it has opened me up where I can use my voice to advocate for leadership development better and get into room with think tanks to discuss issues around policy affecting our larger community. So that's the project for me I'm doing.
Hmm. Well, one of the projects that I'm working on right now is very close to, again, a redemption. It's a redemption story that I'm working on with a young man who made the mistake uh, almost 10 years ago now of running over a woman in West Philadelphia. He was driving, uh, essentially made a wrong turn and killed the mother, a 38-year-old mother of three. And it was because I was out doing a lecture on this particular day and talking about my story that he came up to me and asked me if I could help him figure out how to do something. That he had made this horrible mistake and he didn't know what to do with this mistake. And that was back in June of 2024. And in this 6 month period of time, we've created a process. And I don't like the term process because it's really a mission. We've created this mission for him to contribute to that family. He served his time. He did like 4 years for vehicular homicide, but he still felt like there was something else that he wanted to do. And so we created a mission through which he could uh, create a fund for the sons that she left behind. And it's a very, very bold move. And I appreciate the bold move, but it's a very courageous move to say, it's not enough for me to serve my time, but for me to be a model of reconciliation, a model of uh, giving, putting myself out there in a vulnerable way. And a lot of people have looked at him and said, I could never do that. And I think that, again, going back to this idea of outliers, outliers probably are people that say, um, I'm going to find the courage to do that. I'm going to find the courage to do something radical. And I think that, uh, respectfully speaking, I don't want to overdo the word radical, but I think we need to really be thinking about how to do radically empathetic things to make the
Mm.
world a better place. And that is what he's decided to do. And that's where I'm going from this point on. For the rest of my life, I'm going to figure out how to do radically empathetic things to help heal as much of the world as possible.
I think radical is a great word. Um, when Niiamah posed the question earlier, one of the words that came up for me was emergence.
Hmm.
And, I think that one of the radical things that I did was start my practice in 2021. So I worked in the tech industry for a really long time, like really long time. And I made the choice to leave that world, a very secure um, career with a regular paycheck, to start my practice. And so, what I'm noticing right now in this point in my practice, which is now almost 3.5 years, is that there's this idea of emergence where things are naturally being directed my way. For example, there's a training opportunity that just came up today because someone found out that I had a specific area of expertise, and so you know, and I feel I feel like, for me, what I'm noticing is that as I've embraced this practice of mindfulness, of Reiki, and of resilience cultivation, I feel like things are naturally emerging in my business to move it to the next level.
I appreciate you bringing all of you bringing what is natural to you to here. I feel like this was a wonderful conversation that shows like how we can be and grow, and how you all have leveraged that over time. Outliers. We've been listening to this conversation. I have just a request of you. This has been the conversation that I would really appreciate if you join us here for our one person, one conversation at a time initiative. It would be great, yeah, if you can share this out with your networks and the people that follow you. We'd love for them to hear the conversation that was taking place here today, and it felt like a really like special one that took place. But underneath all of that, please go and do that. But underneath all that, my ask is like, if you can think of one person in your life who would really benefit from the conversation that Butch, Fabio, and Soibi had today, and send them this podcast episode as a gift to them. Let them know that, like, hey, I was thinking about you. There's something that happened here. There's something about you, something about our conversation. Just know that, like, this conversation in particular, I think would be great for you to take a listen to. There's something that tells me that like the real impact of this is going to come from a bunch of people feeling seen and heard when we're
Yeah.
sharing these episodes with intention. Right. It's an interesting way of looking at this here. I know I know there's big things in terms of big numbers, but I'm like that one just gets to the heart of things and says, hey, I'm thinking of you and you're not alone. So if you can do that here, outliers, think of one person in your world, that would just mean the absolute world to me. All right. So we're going to wrap up all of our conversation here, in this way. The way that I close conversations, I like to give us a chance to let outliers know how they can go deeper down the journey with you, and we also share an insight that you got from the conversation. At this point, outliers are taken care of. They're pulling out what they're here to pull out for it. Uh, let's close our space down together by sharing something that you're taking away from this conversation. And if you didn't get an insight, that's totally fine. Just let us know. Okay. So why don't we start with you? So you'd be like, why don't you share with us how outliers can go deeper down the journey with you? I would generally say like, what's your best contact method? Because we're pretty connected nowadays. So what's the best way for them to go down the journey with you? And then what's an insight you got from today?
All right, so my best contact is on LinkedIn. My name on LinkedIn is Soibibo Mac-Roberts, or you can just the LinkedIn link, that's linkedin.com/in/. Soibibo Mac-Roberts. That's my best contact. Or you could mail me, soibiroberts@gmail.com. Okay, for currently my domains are down. I'm going to put them back up. That's my website on netin.org. That's coming back shortly. All right, so okay, I got so much from this episode myself, but one of the key things that resonated with me and I'm thinking on was when Mr. Bush said, "Community is where you get hurt and also where you get healed. The both process must happen in community. So you don't go into self-isolation because you were hurt by community, because you were meant to be healed by that same people." And Mr. Fabio spoke so much about resilience and just being mindful of processing the trauma, and also be very conscious so that you don't get into that point of self-preservation, because the world is supposed to receive of that energy well processed from the trauma you received. That is what the world's supposed to receive. So you're supposed to use it to advance the cause of humanity. So I got so much. Thank you so much for having me on this episode.
Thank you for being here. Like it's been really wonderful having you all. Fabio, why don't we come to you and share with us what's the best way for people to go down deeper down the journey with you, and what's an insight you got, if any?
Sure, there are two ways. One is Instagram at The Stumbling Spirit, and also my website, thestumblingspirit.com. There's an online form that you can fill out and submit. And in terms of a takeaway, I think one of the things that I heard in this conversation was just taking actions that support our well-being and why that's so important. And despite the fact that it can be challenging, it's really a key element of resilience.
Thank you, Fabio. And Butch, why don't you bring us home here? The best way we can go down the journey with you, and that's what you got.
My website is my name, Ulysses Butch Slaughter. You can contact me there. I'd love to help share stories. If people out there interested in sharing their stories, I'd love to help. I got three things, one from each of you. Niiamah, what I got from you is never ignore an email. If you send me an email, I will always respond to you. Anything I can do to help you, know that I am here to help you. I've loved this experience. I appreciate it. Fabio, thank you for the reminder of how important it is to feel the body. I think a lot of times we get trapped in our minds. We get so stuck in our heads and we forget to find a way and release that stuff through our bodies. And then Soibi, thank you for the use of the term clarity. Every time I hear that word, I think of my mother, Clarice. And I think it's so important for us to have clarity. I always say that clarity precedes gratitude. I don't think you can be grateful in this world if you don't have clarity. And I think clarity precedes gratitude. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, here. This has been a truly phenomenal time. Outliers, I strongly recommend that you spend time in each of their worlds here and to keep growing with yourselves and each other. Butch, Fabio, Soibi, thank you so much for just bringing all of you to this conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure. All right. Outliers, remember this until the next time we talk. Go out there and be you on purpose. Journey on.